Great to see you. My name is Joel Vargas. I'm Vice President of Education at Jobs for the Future. For those of you who don't know, Jobs for the Future, we're a national nonprofit organization that drives transformation of our education and workforce systems so that more people get the skills and credentials they need to get high-quality jobs. Our North Star in the next 10 years is to see 75 million workers who face systemic barriers working in high-quality jobs. And we've had the great privilege over the last few years of working with ASA, American Student Assistance, and their organization. I'll let Julie, who's the Senior Vice President there, say more, but they have been really dramatically changing the way that young people and improving the way that young people navigate their way to careers. So it's a pleasure to be on this panel. One of the things that we've been working on with ASA is to understand, elevate the importance of new kinds of paths to careers that, I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, that we call for shorthand non-degree pathways, just to signal, I know, that they're not the traditional high school to BA pathway. And I'm just gonna say a few remarks to kind of tee this up because we have some of the leading purveyors here of some of the promising pathway approaches. I would just say it's becoming these days kind of a very fast evolving, if not messy, post-secondary landscape. And this is what we're trying to make sense of and help to harness that so that more young people get access to good careers. All these things that I'm about to say are true. Bachelor's degrees are still, by and large, very valuable, have long-term economic payoff in terms of wages and good jobs. That said, not all of them do. That said, there are far too many people who start on that pathway who flame out. We need something that we need different array of approaches because the BA or bus system is not working and it saddles a lot of young people with debt. So the other thing that's happening is young people, we know from our research, we've done a lot of survey research of students, parents, guidance counselors, employers. Students are increasingly interested, especially Gen Z, these are our youth of today, right? They're very interested in different types of approaches that don't run through the traditional BA. They wanna find their passion. They wanna start career experiences earlier. They want shorter routes to getting into a career and trying that out. So that is another thing that is true. And those who are in those programs that we've surveyed, they're pretty satisfied with their experiences. Employers are increasingly questioning whether they should be screening everyone based on their attainment of a bachelor's degree. They know that that's a signal, it's a proxy for different skills, and they're interested in diversifying their workforces. They know that that's a barrier to entry. So they want to understand, how do you evaluate and recruit more workers on the basis of skill? And they're very interested in these programs to understand whether there are skilled workers who are graduates who are coming out of these programs. Yet, they have a lot of questions about, how do I evaluate and hire on the basis of skill? And how do I understand the quality of these programs and their graduates? So, maybe I'll just go ahead and look at the BAs instead. So we're still kind of in this moment. If you see, I'm oversimplifying our survey data. But the adults who surround these students as well kind of have a similar set of dispositions and questions around these as well. They're very interested in these different kinds of pathways. They want to be able to guide students and educate them about what those could mean for them in their futures. But they have a lot of questions, and they know they don't have enough information. So they again say, we're kind of apt to advise young people to go on a BA route because we think employers, and they're right? That employers really still look at that. So there's, the last thing I'll say about this is, it doesn't help that we have imperfect language about what these pathways are, all right? We tend to define them by what they are not, which kind of others them in a way, or makes them seem like less than pathways. And the stigma is part of the barrier to figuring out really what does quality look like. Can we promote these as high quality options? So even when I say non-degree, that's kind of a misnomer because a lot of great programs actually do sync up and transfer to degree paths as well. So there are a lot of questions, right? A lot of messiness here. But I think we have a great panel here today to help us unpack and sort through what these pathways can do for young people and how they answer these questions by young people and the adults who surround them. So I'm going to introduce them now. And let's see, we have to my immediate right, Chad Rountree, who's the CEO of Propel America. And next to him, we have Reuben Ogbonna, who's the executive director of Marcy Lab School. And to his right is Aisha Francis, who's the president and CEO of Benjamin Franklin Cummings Tech. And to her right is Julie Lammers, Senior Vice President, Advocacy and Corporate Social Responsibility of American Student Assistance. So I'm going to start. We're going to do these lightning rounds. I'm going to do something really awkward and ask a bunch of questions at once, and then give our first three panelists here 4 minutes, about 4 minutes each. Okay, we're going to really try to stick to time to answer them all. And then we'll ask Julie a separate question of her own. But here are the questions. What is the what of your pathway? And by that I mean, what is the design intended outcomes and who are your partners? And what is the why of your pathway? So what was the motivation, rationale, and need for creating this? And if you were to cite one power stat or outcome that should compel people to pay attention to this path, what would that be? Chad, do you want to start?
Thank you. So I'm actually going to start with the why thread of this question first. Right now, there are an estimated 13 million young adults, 18 to 24-year-olds, who are currently locked out of the opportunity to build an upwardly mobile career. And that number is only growing with each class of graduating seniors. They're looking for a pathway, one that's endorsed by employers. They're looking for coaching and support. And right now, at the same time, across our economy, there are a range of jobs that are in high demand, very little supply, jobs that are going unfilled, and this is particularly true in the healthcare sector where we currently operate. And so at Propel America, we are driven by a fundamental belief. These labor market challenges, they are not the result of talent scarcity. Talent exists. Rather, this is a systems design challenge that is implicating K-12, higher ed, and industry, and its employers and young people like those each of us serve, who are unfortunately shouldering the burden of this pain. And so our operating thesis is, if we can provide the full technical and academic training to recent high school graduates in ways that are affordable and accessible, and provide the full suite of support to drive retention, completion, and downstream placement with employer partners, we can ultimately propel young adults' ability to build upwardly mobile careers, all while filling critical roles in an industry that we all depend on. And so if I now jump to the what, Propel America, we are a national nonprofit driving multi-state impact. We have defined our scaling and coined our model a jobs-first higher education. This is a both-and solution, a blend of both college, but an index towards more quickly entering the labor market. It is accelerated job training, market-aligned, employer-endorsed, culminates with our fellows earning stackable college credits and credentials. It's Pell eligible, so there's no out-of-pocket cost for our learners, and it leads to a middle-skilled job in a matter of months, not years, like the more traditional paths. We're an employer-driven model, so we largely partner with large regional hospital systems. They have a replenishing demand for talent that we are aiming to fill, and so they are critical partners in our work. We also have a portfolio of higher ed partners, and while the broader higher ed landscape may be imperfect, we do not believe it is useless. And so with our partners, we are working to repurpose their product, repurpose their access to Pell in order to better reach those who have been historically overlooked. And through these cross-sectoral partnerships, we are propelling young adults' abilities to develop in-demand skills, acquire college credits and stackable credentials, all while filling those vacant roles with vetted employer partners. To our power stat. Again, our fellows are paying $0 out of pocket. And in under a year, they are on average experiencing a 30 to 35% increase in wages, which outpaces the wage premium that two-year degrees are creating. And they're persisting at a rate of 74% as they enter their second year of the workforce, delivering on our thesis of creating economic stability for young people, delivering on our aim of creating ROI for our employers. Propel America, alongside our partners, we are proving that young people from across our country, they have passion, they have purpose, and when that is met with preparation and access, lives can be changed.
Awesome. Chad. I'm Chad, you just went. Reuben, excuse me.
Awesome. That was awesome. Reuben Ogbonna, co-founder and CEO or executive director of the Marcy Lab School. I'll start with the why also. And my why begins with my time as a teacher. I came out of college and I was a high school math teacher in an incredible performing arts school on the south side of Atlanta. Our claim to fame is it was the school that Outkast graduated from. One of the most beautiful school communities, a school leader who invested in me and saw something in me. I thought I was going to be a teacher for a couple of years before going back to use my econ degree, but I just knew that education was going to be my path shortly after entering the classroom. I moved to New York because my wife got into grad school. And when I came to New York, I was enamored by the public charter school sector. Their power stat was that 100% of their students who come from similar communities as my own back in Atlanta go off to college each year. And so when I got to New York, I just had to see how the sausage was made, so to speak. I was a teacher, I was a dean and coach at some really incredible charter schools, and I saw what it actually takes to get 100% of our students, our seniors, to graduate, walk across the stage with a diploma and a college admissions letter in hand. But many of the people in this room, I'm sure, are here because you know that that's just the first step in the process. In many ways, I felt complicit in a systemic challenge, sending our students off to school each year, sometimes taking on a mountain of debt, sometimes choosing to go to schools that were more cost-effective but didn't have the resources to support them. And so I was seeing the same thing over and over again, which was that these high-performing students with a ton of potential and a ton of passion and drive weren't getting what we promised them as their teachers out of this college dream that we had been selling since they were in kindergarten. When I looked at the landscape, it seemed like this was the only option. We kept sending students down this track because there just was nothing better that existed. There were a ton of strong workforce development programs that I thought were doing an incredible job of supporting students who weren't necessarily considering a college option. But I thought about, what about all of those students who could get into college but may not necessarily get into the types of colleges that routinely lead them to incredible jobs without a ton of student loan debt? In fact, that's the majority of young college goers in this country. This was back in 2018, 2017, when I met my incredible co-founder, Maya, who was also working at Teach for America as an instructional coach at this time. The hypothesis was if we could partner closely with industry and design a school model in close contact with our community and our students, we could create a high-value, aspirational alternative to college. And we piloted that model in September of 2019. We got any one of our friends that we could talk to who worked in tech, HR, recruiting, and we said, you know, we're hearing the need for tech talent. We're hearing the need for diverse engineering teams. Can we build out an academic model with you that's not just about technical training, but does wrap around this technical training with strong liberal arts, general studies, leadership development, and all the things that we think is necessary to launch an incredible career? We found 10 students who were willing to engage in a pilot with us. We were just 2 teachers. And every step of the way, we saw them as our co-founders. We got interrupted halfway through the pandemic, but they kept going with us. We moved our classroom to Zoom. By the end of that 1 year, those 10 students, 9 of them finished, and all of them got incredible jobs at tech companies and financial services companies, JP Morgan, the New York Times, Asana, Spotify, and their average salary at age 19 and 20 was $103,000 a year. We felt like we had found a crack in the system. Yeah, you can clap for that. The why and the what, in many ways, 5 years later, is still what it was back then. We want to put together a really aspirational alternative to college that can serve the many tens, hundreds of thousands of students who aren't being served by a traditional higher education system. It's a 1-year, full-time model, tuition-free thanks to the support of incredible companies and sponsors. And again, it blends computer science and software engineering as our kind of core academic major with a really thoughtful and innovative leadership development program rooted in race, identity development, leadership development, financial literacy, and many other things that we think are necessary to transition into the career sector of their choice. And what makes our program innovative is that we believe it is our mission to bridge the gap from education to employment. So alongside of our teaching and instructional leadership team, we essentially have an in-house sales function. Their entire responsibility is to go out to companies in New York City and get them to take a bet on our students. And all that we ask is we ask them to allow our students to interview alongside of the same students who are coming from their traditional college pipelines. And if our model is what we believe it is, we know that our students can compete. And when we think about scaling this model, the question is, how many more companies, how many more career sectors can we convince to take a chance on students who can demonstrate their capacity based on their skills and not just their credentials?
Excellent, Aisha.
Hello, everyone. I am representing colleges that do actually give degrees, but that do our work in different ways. And so we are actually trying to change the way that this work is done from the inside out. I represent Franklin Cummings Tech. We are an independent nonprofit technical college. There are not a lot of those left because we as a country stopped investing in this work. And so what we represent is an opportunity for people who want to become electricians, who want to become automotive technicians, who want to go into IT at a sub-bachelor's degree level to do both and to pursue their trade and pursue college education, but to do that in terms of our framework, first through early college or certificate programming, all that's college credit bearing, and then if they want to add on and stack another year, then they graduate with an associate degree. So we're offering this kind of laddering approach to education and sub-bachelor's degree areas in fields where there are plentiful jobs in the greater Boston area that pay well, but at least half of the people who are already in the fields also are sub-bachelor's degree, because we really want to, although we do some of the work of helping to convince companies as well to take a shot on folks who are not their non-traditional employee, although they probably should be. But we also want our students to be able to come out of our learning environment heading straight into work. 80% of our students work. We're the only college in Massachusetts where most of our students are men of color that identify as Black and Latinx. And we are doing this in the context of an environment where most of our students did not consider themselves college bound, which is why we're kind of feeding them into the educational sort of apparatus through early college and also through certificates. And what we find is that for our students, we have a 52% graduation rate, at 85% job placement rate, and students are earning twice their entire household income at the time that they started. So when they graduate, they're earning twice their household income at the time that they started as a student. So, those are our calling cards, and what we're trying to do is find a more dynamic way to deliver technical and trade education that leads to economic advancement. We're a niche institution. We do this in about 12 professional pathways, but we are really involved in making connections to the workforce so that they understand more about the students that we educate and how they can be more ready for the types of talent that we produce.
Woo, these are some hot power stats. Thank you. Julie, what are the policies? It's hard to follow that, I know. Well, now we got to talk about scale. What are the policy opportunities that you see to support more of these paths in terms of politics and policy windows, and what are the opportunities to reach more students and the adults who influence them to get the info that they need to answer their questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are, I think the good answer is there's lots of opportunity for policy improvement. One of the things that we see quite a bit is a lot of focus on funding issues, right? So we have a robust conversation going on in Congress now around the need for workforce Pell, and how do you expand opportunity for shorter programs to receive eligibility for Pell Grants, trying to understand quality of those programs, debate around whether for-profit entities should have access to Pell. All of those things are happening in Congress right now. But beyond that, ensuring that Pell meets the needs of more students at a much higher rate, and increasing Pell limits would go a long way to making sure more young people have access to opportunity for these types of programs. Long debates around things like the National Apprenticeship Act and the degree to which the federal government can support expansion of apprenticeship programs. We did see progress last week. The House of Representatives House of Representatives passed the WIOA Act, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and this included opportunities for to help facilitate states towards more skills-based hiring, which will be a huge benefit for changing the perception, I believe, of a lot of these programs. We see a huge challenge with the work that ASA and JFF have done around perception of these paths and the disconnect between what young people are saying they want, what employers believe is valuable as they try to hire. 72% of employers in our surveys said that they did not think a bachelor's degree was a reliable signal of understanding the quality of a candidate, and yet they know nothing else, so that's where they'll default. At the same time, parents are saying, I believe employers are hiring in this way, so that's the direction I'm going to push my child in. And so there is a chicken and egg dynamic here that we need to figure out how to upend. And I think one of the keys to that is more skills-based hiring. There has been a lot of conversation at the CEO level at a lot of organizations saying, yes, we're right on board with skills-based hiring. And yet when you get to the hiring manager level and the complexity of changing hiring systems slows down that process, it becomes less likely for skills-based hiring to occur. So states have an enormous policy role in this effort as they rethink how they as a state, they as an employer, are hiring employees, and the level to which they can change some of this dynamic around hiring for skills rather than degrees. A number of states have moved in that direction, and this one of the changes in this WIOA Act would allow for more investment in that to make it more possible for states to do that. So on a state level, I think that's really important. However, that only sort of goes halfway. I think there's a lot that needs to be done around supporting counselors, around understanding the incentive structures that we have placed on high schools to incentivize four-year degree acceptance as a measure of a quality of a high school, rather than trying to understand what the long-term implications are of properly counseling a student towards a path that might work for them, or understanding the real needs or desires of a student and family. So pipe down the pipeline, a lot more that can be done to bolster our CTE programs, help young people understand what it is they want to do in the world, what they like, what they love, most importantly, what they hate and never want to do again. How do we help young people narrow those decisions at a much earlier age so that they can understand much more deliberately what one of the wonderful programs that are here, why pick Propel over Marcy Lab schools? Have I ever take the time to understood that I would really be good at healthcare? Right? And so when we have limited opportunity for young people to make those decisions and have those conversations at an earlier age, it makes it much harder to understand their path to post-secondary. So there's a lot that's happening at the policy level that we think we need to change, to nudge systems in that direction to make opportunity more possible. But I think there is a lot of conversation happening now and a lot more openness that these things do actually need to change. So I'm very optimistic that will move in that direction.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, we're going to move to a lightning round here. 2.5 minutes each. We'll go Aisha, Reuben, and then Chad. What is the toughest question you get from students, parents, or employers, and how do you answer?
Our toughest question is one about supply and demand from employers who we just had our career fair, kind of all-in career fair last week, and we had 55 employers, and they want more students. Why aren't there more people who are pursuing these paths? Machining and CAD and so forth. And I think that one of the challenges goes back to what Julie was discussing, which is it's very difficult for middle schools, young high school students to understand what their kind of aptitude would be and what their interest is, and so they don't really know what their interests are. They know what they see, and there's a disconnect there. And so I think the other conversation that we're having with employers is, talking with them to be more generous on the front end in terms of how they're investing in workforce development, and instead of waiting until the back end, which is the graduation date. Are they willing to put some of their hiring investments in the front end and invest in scholarships, invest in sort of the kind of career exploration that would make it much more interesting for students to know at the high school level what some of their pain points are, what the fields are where they are finding the most difficulty hiring.
Awesome. Will my son, daughter, or child reach a glass ceiling in their career without this college degree? And I trust you to be able to help my child land a job. That's been proven. What's going to happen to them 5 to 10 years from now? It's a hard question to answer. I know the world that I want to live in. I know all the challenges that I think we're going to be able to exert some level of control or influence over. But this room, I hope, is representative of like the larger societal shift. I think about one of our largest employer partners, hires students on a consecutive basis year after year. Their entry-level salaries for these 18, 19, and 20-year-olds are $130,000 base salary with a $50,000 equity package. It's hard to turn that type of offer down. It's also a very large Fortune 500 company. If you look, in the fine print, there is an actual caveat that says you can only work here with a college degree. Marcy has a special carve-out. And so how much longer do we have to be a part of the process to ensure that our students get what they deserve? When I think about what I hope to be true for our organization as we grow, we're only 5 years in, but I hope to be able to leverage our success and hopefully scale to be able to influence policy, both at the public sector level and the corporate level, to make sure not just Marcy Lab School students, but students from all of our programs and the many more will be able to excel in their careers and not necessarily have to contend with the red tape that comes with not having a degree.
For our young people, career is the destination. And right now you have employers who are evolving to use more than the degree to evaluate readiness of incoming talent, which is creating access. And at the same time, when you listen to the preferences of young people, they are desiring shorter, less expensive, more direct-to-career training paths. And I believe the duality of these two shifts is creating advantageous tailwinds that is fueling the design of some really cool and exciting career pathway work. However, K-12 as a sector, I don't believe has yet to catch up to these rapidly changing shifts that are happening in the education to employment landscape. And as a result, we are constantly hearing a common set of questions being raised by both K-12 students and K-12 staff. On the student side of things, it is, what pathways exist in my community? If I pursue a non-traditional pathway, will I be in a position to provide for myself, and will an employer actually hire me? And if I get hired, will I enjoy the work? On the staff side of things, again, a common set of questions. What pathways exist in my community? If my students pursue a non-traditional path, will they be in a position to economically provide for themselves today and into the future? And how do I best support my students when more times than not, I did not take a non-traditional path, and in real time, I am navigating the College for All legacy culture within my school building? And so for me, the thread woven throughout each of these questions is the need to create greater career awareness and access within K-12. And in high schools in particular, we believe it is essential that we are educating high school students on the variety of paths that exist in a local community via early discovery and exposure opportunities, that we're creating low-stake ways for high school students to try on different roles via work-based learning programs. And we believe it's critical that we're positioning local employers to speak directly to their willingness to hire from non-traditional pipelines and pools, and how they actively invest in the upskilling and the career building of their team members. We have found employers to be one of the most powerful signals in brokering trust for both K-12 students and staff. Ultimately, we would like to see the day where all high school students are not only earning their high school diploma, but that experience is complemented with purposeful experiences that are building career momentum and a rich, nuanced understanding of all of the career paths that exist on the other side of that high school graduation stage.
Okay, wow. Again, Julie, back to you. How do you and ASA think about what it'll take to shift the paradigm and demand from traditional degree paths, remove stigmas, just a small task here, and create a post-secondary ecosystem that maximizes opportunities in a dynamic labor market where people will change jobs more and more frequently?
Yeah. And so I think one of the largest challenges we have goes back to not only what we found in the research, but something Reuben said earlier around when you were starting your model, and the 10 students that started with you had to take a chance on something. Taking a chance in post-secondary education is way too risky for most families to undertake. They're unwilling to do something that doesn't have a proved outcome. And so we need to do better at understanding and helping to amplify the outcomes of really good, strong programs so that risk feels less daunting. I think from both a parent standpoint as well as a counselor standpoint, they are unwilling to counsel on something that they don't fully understand. They like the idea of being able to diversify the options that they're sharing with families, but they don't understand the landscape. There are so many credentials right now, over 1 million credentials that currently exist. There's no way of deciphering what is the perfect solution for any one student. And so they fall back on the 20 schools that they might know and have had some experience helping young people navigate. So there is a navigation piece that needs to be bolstered to make sure that we understand how are we providing counselors with the appropriate information to help young people make these decisions. But ultimately, the answer is outcomes, right? If we do not have programs that are providing high quality outcomes, that are providing the types of employer engagement that these programs are providing, that are showing the really great outcomes for students that programs like our panelists are providing, then we are never going to change that idea that the bachelor's degree is the only way to succeed. I think from a sort of PR standpoint, we need to do a lot more of helping to amplify the idea that college, as we used to know it, has changed dramatically. And I had this conversation probably 2 years ago at ASU, and as someone said to me at the time, what you really need is a movie. You need a movie that shows someone going to a non-traditional path as their college. Because right now, all movies about college are ivy-covered green quads that are idyllic with people playing frisbees on the quad. That's not the reality for most post-secondary graduates, most post-secondary participants. So we need to have a massive mind shift in what our perception of post-secondary education is and should be. And the ideal of being able to go to a 4-year school and find yourself there is a great idea, but it is vastly too expensive for most young people to take that route. So how are we ensuring that all young people have access to high quality programs that are going to get them to a place of economic prosperity? It is trying to shift what we perceive as the ideal state of college. And that takes a lot of doing. It's going to take a lot of PR and a lot of research and a lot of conversations. But I think that's why JFF and ASA are going down this path. JFF from the standpoint of employer engagement, economic mobility for all young people. ASA from the standpoint of we need to start these conversations much earlier and make sure that they understand who they want to be in the world if we're ever going to get them to a place of being able to make an informed choice about what comes next after high school.
Thank you. I think in part elevating some of these power stats, as I'm sure there are more, it could be quite have powerful impact on the way people perceive these programs. Okay, we're moving into the home stretch here. So I'm going to ask, and we'll just go to my right and we'll just keep going. Julie, you'll have the final word. What is the one thing about these pathways that you'd like attendees to leave with?
Actually picking up where Julie was just at, the dream script of graduating from high school, seamlessly transitioning into higher ed, and then seamlessly transitioning into a job, that is in fact commensurate to the degree that you've earned is not what is uniformly playing out for our young people. Even the best charter management organizations are at best getting 50% on-time 4-year graduation rates. We know who tends to do well in the direct 2-degree routes. And as more high-quality innovative workforce development programs continue to grow in prevalence, we have to challenge this notion that immediately entering the workforce is the lesser of the available options. I stand here today as the CEO of a national nonprofit and also the product of non-traditional paths. 20 plus years ago, I began my professional journey by earning a culinary arts credential. And I didn't go on to earn my bachelor's, master's, or even attend Harvard until my mid to late 20s. And so for me, this conversation is personal. And I'm also reminded each time our fellows earn their first set of credits, earn their first credential, earn their first job offer, in the potential, in what it means to create economic mobility for a group of young people who would have otherwise been overlooked. And so for me, this conversation is about more of an essential shift, a shift to be more responsive to the needs of our young people, to those that are navigating the realities of poverty, those who are looking for a different exchange of value, those who need scaffolded learning, and in Propel America's case, those who cannot afford to choose either a degree or a job, but those who in fact need both.
The first time I came to this conference, I was taken aback by just how much momentum there was around the conversation of portable credentials, like asynchronous learning, like fast time to course delivery. And we need all of those things because of the number of adult learners and folks who have situations in life that require just that. But in this world where we're coming to recognize the limitations of our traditional higher education system, like we can't leave behind the young adult experience. Julie, you said something about spaces to find yourself. Yes, this is a model that's based on like strong employer partnerships. There's a strategic learning strategy. There's, all the things that make up the post-secondary alternative kind of landscape. And at the end of the day, this is about 20 and 21-year-olds building community, finding themselves, building friendships, sitting around a table, having conversations about race, identity, climate, and the environment, because that really matters too. We can't move ourselves into a world where that's just a privilege afforded to the few white, wealthy students who can attend college as a luxury good. We often say things like higher education or college is broken. And I'd say that there are a lot of people for whom college is working really, really well. And maybe the question shouldn't be, how do we completely tear down the system, but how do we bring some of those things from the ivory towers into the hands of the people who deserve it the most? And so we're a bunch of leaders up here who go to conversations, to tables with funders, and we ask for what we believe our students deserve. The conversation that Arnie Duncan and Chicago Cred had at lunch today is a really inspiring one with program participants at the center. And Arnie Duncan himself is saying, I'm going to the public sector and the private sector to demand what my participants deserve, because incredible things happen when we do get it. And so all that to say, this is about young adults being able to self-actualize and become the best versions of themselves too.
I want to double click on everything that Chad and Reuben said, and I'll just take a different approach, which is in the interim. So we have talked a lot today, and we'll continue, through Wednesday, about the difficulties, the barriers that are in place as we're trying to blur the lines between what a four-year degree looks like and what a college path looks like, and how you leverage the fact that a lot of the young people now are working and going to school at the same time. How do we make that easier? And the navigation aspect isn't what it should be now. And so I want to challenge all of us and to really feel empowered about the sphere of influence that we do have. I mean, you all have a lot of knowledge about the options that exist, and it's about, for me, thinking about how we transfer the knowledge that we have to the students that are in our world, and doing what we can, and while the systems kind of catch up to us. And so that's my takeaway is, for all of the students for whom Franklin Cummings Tech isn't a good fit, maybe Propel is, and maybe Marcy, when you all come to Boston, maybe that will be a good fit for them, because it is about how we share these resources. We do know that there are other paths, and these other paths are working, and it's really up to us, I think, to connect more youth to these options.
So I think one thing to take away from this is that post-secondary education is changing, and these leaders are the ones changing it. And so we need to figure out not only how do we amplify the great work that they're doing and understand where pockets of excellence are, so that we can articulate that more and prove to young people that there is less risk in going a path that they maybe their friends have never gone, but it will lead to good outcomes and good economic prosperity for them. So I think one of the things we need to really focus on is where great things are happening, and how do we as a community uplift and continue to expand some of these programs. How can we bring in employers so that Marcy Labs isn't struggling with a sales team to try to get young people connected to an employer every year. Employer and partnerships are enormously important. A lot of people in these rooms have them, but it is a key to scaling this work and scaling it really well. So how are we using our social capital to do that?
I'm going to say 3 things in closing very quickly. One is make sure to go to www.expandopportunities.org. That is where a lot of the resources to which we refer today are housed, including the survey data and actually a landscape scan, which includes, I think, all of the efforts here that our leaders have talked about. I want to thank you for being such an engaged audience, and I really want to thank our panelists for all the work that they do and for spending time to share with us today. So can you join me in thanking them?